Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Weld Wednesdays with AWS, brought to you by the American Welding Society. Joining me this month is Ashley Applegate and Bobby Pease from Kentucky Welding Institute. In this episode, we chat all about the AWS Sense program and discuss some of the many benefits it has to offer for students in all types of welding programs, to include high school, post-secondary, agriculture, and more. Let's go ahead and get into it.
ARC Junkies presents Weld Wednesday with AWS, brought to you by the American Welding Society. And now your host, Jason Becker.
Ashley, Bobby, welcome back.
Yes, sir, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, it's been a minute. I think the last time we got to chat was the welding competition, April 2021.
It's been a couple of years. We hosted you up here, and you did a podcast on site, I think, with a student from Alaska.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. I actually have his card. Alan, I have his card. I've got his card hanging up. He sent me a thank you card prior to actually getting to meet him at KWI. So that's one of the things I've got set up here in the BuzzBox studios. I like to collect little trinkets and stuff.
And if I'm not mistaken, he had heard about us on your show. Right.
On the podcast, yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of what the letter was about. Like, thanks for, doing the podcast and, letting me know about KWI. I actually went down there from Alaska and, took classes, and I mean, he did a great job. So, I mean, it was really cool to kind of be able to connect all the dots.
Very neat.
So how's everything been going at KWI since a couple of years ago? I mean, you guys have done some expansion. I mean, you're doing some cool things up there.
Yeah, we've climbed the ladders in a couple different areas. We're now dual accredited with ACCSC and Asset. On the ACCSC side of the house, we were just named School of Distinction for 2023. On Asset, they're using me as a curriculum specialist. They've flown me across, to Eastern United States to help audit some welding schools already. Ashley and I have climbed the ranks with NCCER. We can now do gold card certification for crane operator, rigger, and signal. And then Ashley with NCCCO is all the way up as far as a crane practical examiner and rigger level 2. We were already signal and rigger level 1. So we have become much more than a weld school. We're trying to make those individuals, well-rounded employees all the way around. Many tools in their tool pouch when they roll out of here.
That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what industry needs, because a lot of times welding schools, they teach you the fundamentals and the basics of welding. You get a little bit of cutting in there. Maybe, you touch on blueprints, but that's not everything you need to know, especially if you're going directly into industry, where you're doing heavy fab or you're doing shutdowns or turnarounds. I mean, you've got to know how to rig things up. You've got to know how to do proper layouts to get your material from A to B and make sure everything connects and ties in correctly. Safety is a huge, piece of that puzzle. Signalman, like I've worked on job sites before. My dad's actually a crane operator in Tennessee right now. And everybody that comes out there, it seems like they've got their own little hand signals. And he's like, no, there's a standard for this. And until you guys can get me somebody over here that can operate send me the correct signals, this hook isn't moving, So it's great to hear that you guys are teaching all that and getting these young men and women prepared.
And we're seeing it more and more. Oh, go ahead, Ashley.
I was talking with the industry, and you're exactly right, Jason, because they want someone who could show up, be at work on time, and do more than things that welders do. So we're even teaching contractor groups. We've had a couple of contractor groups that came in, and we've taught them the full course gamut for advanced rigger and signal person, and then Bobby would take them out as an examiner and give that examination. So we're continuing to bridge that gap between education and industry, because we're linking.
And it seems like it's getting harder and harder to make a pick on a job site as far as the strain and safety. More and more companies are wanting that certified crane operator to be paired up with a certified rigger or a certified signal person. Now our students come for welding, and we give them that, but we're just trying to make them as employable as possible. So many haters on social media say there's no way you guys can get your students on these double time crews or these specialty companies, or they're not averaging 30 plus an hour right out the gate. But the difference is contractors are hiring our guys not yeah, they're welders, but welders plus. Tested in ATF with a slew of AWS certs, and they can rig and signal. They have MSHA 24, OSHA 30, TWIC Basic Plus. Like they're coming with a resume that looks like they're 5 or 8 years deep in industry already, and we found that that's helped us out a whole lot.
It seems like it's more of an apprenticeship
Yeah,
program than
and
a
we,
welding
we
school.
we tussle back and forth with that too. This is probably the second most comment on there. Is obviously this. The scat. The union versus non type of thing. Why would I come to your school when I can go to an apprenticeship for free and get paid to learn? But man, the union around us, they farm us heavy. I'll turn it over to Ashley, and he can talk about the union that comes in. But we are tight with union, and they love what we do. A lot of times they're offering our guys out the gate. They're shaving 2 and 3 years off the apprenticeship. If the graduate has any kind of construction background at all, they'll go provisional journeyman right out the gate.
Yeah, we've got union contractors that are here regularly, and some of those locals are starting our grads off. 6 months of KWI, they're going to put $60 plus onto your work, so it makes a big difference. And I was in Ohio recently at a union meeting, and there were several different locals from 3 different states there, and basically we're trying to figure out ways. They're just like everybody else, so private contractors, union alike, everybody's looking for welders. And these guys are reaching out to us to say, what can we do to get more welders into our organization? No different than private contractors are too.
Yeah, that was one of the great things that I did. Like I went through my apprenticeship program down here in Florida, and I was able to complete a 4-year program in a year and a half. I was putting in extra time, but I also brought experience with me. Like I was already certified. So when I went in, like I could just take the exam. A lot of my certs weren't transferable, but I possessed those skills to be able to walk into the shop and be able to test out with that instructor and the inspector and all that stuff.
That's right. And that works really good with the ATF program that we run here. It may be a different number. So what we call the UA21, or what they call the UA21 or the UA63, is what we call, whatever our WPSE is. But the student's done it, so now they just show up to that union hall or that testing facility and knock it out of the park, and they're on the job site.
Yeah, just give me the test.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Now, Bobby, I didn't realize you're a full-time welding instructor at a local high school, in addition to teaching at KWI.
That's kind of how KWI came to be, really. As a high school instructor, I was taking my guys to a bunch of welding contests, and then locally here, we were like, why do all our good welders go somewhere else to train? We didn't feel like our community college system was getting it done. So I was sending guys out to a lot of private weld schools. So we started KWI here as a way to keep some of our guys here, but we came at it, how do we separate ourselves from the herd? And again, it comes back to that more than a weld school type mindset. We're trying to make complete employees, complete people. We're getting ready to roll in some personal finance classes this summer because another thing that we're trying to combat is students who hit the road and they're making upwards close to, if not, but 6 figures. They go from making nothing at 18 to at 19 making 100,000. What are they doing with that extra money? So I teach at high school every day, 5 days a week. And I'm teaching since level 1 at my high school, and then at KWI I serve as a certified welding inspector and the director of education. So I handle the lesson plans, the curriculum. We got some awesome welding instructors that are rolling in off here from SWAT or ParFab or UPS, these specialty, but they're not teachers, not yet. And we found, at least in Kentucky, the number one reason why great instructors don't stay in the classroom is because of the lesson plans, the meetings, the red tape. So I take all that off their plate. When our instructors come in, we teach them through NCCERs, ICTP, how to manage a classroom, how to teach, how to question. But all the back end work is taken off their plate by me as far as quizzes, lesson plans, PowerPoints. All they have to do is walk in, turn on a TV, and teach and pull in their experiences, and then go down to the shop and weld, do what they do.
That's a huge asset. That's the same exact thing that I did down here because, like you were saying, like a lot of these folks that come in, they want to teach. They've got the passion, they've got the drive to be able to do it, but it's the lesson plans and the classroom management and the grading system and like all the logistics that go aside from teaching. It's not just, hey, let's go in the lab and let me show you something. It's, we got to do a PowerPoint. There's going to be a written exam. There's a practical exam. Well, now we got rubrics. Well, what's a rubric? Like you got to you get them all that information. Like, I mean, for the longest time, I didn't, as an instructor, I didn't know what a rubric was, but like, it's a grading scale, so everybody gets graded equally. But how do you build one of those? So the fact that you're going in there and you're able to kind of can all this up for them, so that when they walk in there, they just pop the top and get to work. That's a huge asset to anybody coming into the industry, and I think that's going to be one way to bring in more instructors as well as retain them.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, Ashley, you were talking about Sense Level 1. Let's touch on that, because a lot of people kind of get confused about what the Sense program actually is. So you're teaching that at the high school level.
Yeah, so Bobby's teaching the Sense program at his local high school. And what we started to realize, here in Kentucky and even abroad when I talked to other instructors, was the stuff that Bobby just mentioned. I'm a great welder and I've been hired to teach, but I don't know where to start. And that's where Sense really came in for a lot of folks. So it's going to give you a basic blueprint that you need. It's going to give you a basic guideline that you need. It's going to have something that you can do in the shop to prove your skill, but it's also going to have a written knowledge test that you can hop online and take on the computer. So what we've been doing in the past, 3 years or longer is teaching train the trainer courses. So we'll have new instructors or sometimes even seasoned instructors that just want more knowledge. So we either do this off-site or in some cases on-site here in Flemingsburg, put the instructors in the seat of the student. So they listen to the PowerPoint, they take the online exam, then we hit the shop and we get dirty. When we do a professional development, it's not sit in a chair and fall asleep while you're texting your girlfriend or your wife. We're going to get busy. We're going to put on some gear. We're going to go to the shop. We're going to sweat. And at the end of these, now that these teachers can take this back to their school, they can become an accredited training program for Sense and start turning out good quality welders from their local
high school. So in the state of
Kentucky,
Jason, we've got what's called College and Career Ready, CCR. And with that, Kentucky Department of Education labels certain things that will qualify a student to be CCR, quote unquote. So for the ag side, an FFA is typically a big program for welding. Like you go across the U.S. and a lot of ag programs have welding. So we're recruiting from two sides of the house. Skills USA is huge in Kentucky, and so is FFA. Well, our customers, our students are coming from one of those two programs more than likely. So with the ag side now, a student can certify or be career ready if they complete the Sense Level 1 program. And that's on the ag side. So the CTE side with Skills USA, they do Kentucky DOT or other certification programs. But with the FFA side, ag teachers can career ready their students through AWS Sense, which was awesome, but there was no train the trainer in that. So about 3 years ago, Ashley and I took our show on the road. We've been going to these summer teacher conferences and teaching ag teachers how to teach welding. So ag teachers go to a 4-year institution, Moorhead or UK or Louisville, and they learn how to teach. They learn philosophy and pedagogy, and they learn everything ag, right? As an ag teacher, I'm teaching beef cattle and corn and everything. So welding might be one class, but it's not enough to teach Sense, which is where we come in. So we've got a Google Classroom that's packaged for those ag teachers that has all the PowerPoints. It's got Ashley and some how-to videos. Ashley will show you how to turn on the oxy-fuel torch. And so those ag teachers are using those either A, the night before to be one step ahead of their students, or B, they're playing those with their students. Ashley's been to a couple locations where they said, hey, you taught me how to do oxy-fuel. And Ashley's like, what are you talking about? They're like, well, my ag teacher is playing your videos before we hit the shop, so I can see how to, set my oxygen at 5, my acetylene at 5, my oxygen at 20, and then we go to the shop. So we've developed quizzes that way. And then again, with this Train the Trainer course, we take those blueprints. We ask the program, because Jason in Kentucky, they don't have to do all processes to be career ready. So an ag program can pick, hey, we're just going to certify with MIG or flux. So they have to do some basic, right? They have to do the safety, the symbols. They have to do weld quality and cutting. And then they pick a process. They pick stick, TIG, MIG, or flux. So we ask those teachers, what are you teaching? And then we teach them that specifically, and then we'll let them weld those processes out to empower them to be able to take that home to their classes and do that.
So you're able to cater it to kind of each necessity that every instructor comes in, because not everybody is the same. And that's the one thing that's very different about, here in the States versus other places where they teach welding is, you know, gas metal arc welding might be huge in one area, but in another area, everybody's running stick, or you go to another part of the country and everybody's running flux core. So it really just depends on what industry that you're in as to, the demand of the students coming out of the program. You don't want to, set up a program and just teach stick the entire time when nobody in industry in a 100-mile radius is hiring for it. You want to teach what folks are actually looking for so they can get these people out in industry and get them hired.
Yeah, it's regionally sometimes. We had a class in December and there was a dozen or so in instructors there. And, in a certain region of the state, they're closer to the Ohio River. So they were all about the flux core process because they're closer to shipyard. In another region of the state, they were more agriculture. So it's all about the stick weld. Most ag teachers are going to shy away from TIG, but that don't mean we left it off the plate. We still go back and we show how to walk the cup. We show how to, dab the puddles on the aluminum. So they get a feel and a taste for everything. And then they specialize on what they want to look good with and teach for their area before they're located in their agriculture.
Probably the best light bulb moment is when actually, when we say, hey, we have an ag teacher says, I've really thought about buying a TIG machine. And we're like, well, pump the brakes. Do you have a stick machine? Because guess what? We can scratch start with you right now. And their mind is blown because they think they have to buy some high-end, high freak machine. And really, no, all you need is a DC and let's roll. Yeah,
that was really cool. We were, one of our colleagues, Keegan Dales and I, we were in a little tiny high school in central Kentucky in LaRue County. And we went there just to talk to the kids. We were doing a couple 6011 demos because it was an FFA type of school and they run 6011 welding rods for their state competition. And one of the kids said, well, man, I wish we could TIG weld. That would be so awesome. And at the time, Keegan and I carried around one of these little short bottles of argon. And I said, Keegan, I'll get the bottle out of the trailer. You go grab your rig. And in 10 minutes, we were TIG welding with these students from an ACDC Lincoln buzz box.
Yeah.
And they couldn't believe it. So if you fast forward, that instructor has been to a couple of our train the trainer classes. He has now implemented, Chris has implemented the program. And when I visited him this past year, I hadn't been there in a couple of years, he's taken it one step further. He did finally get a couple new MIG machines, but he's got a TIG machine as well.
Yeah, it blows a lot of people's minds that I've like, well, if you get a stick machine, you can TIG weld with it. And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, they're both constant current processes.
Right.
You scratch start that thing, you're off to the races right there. That's all you need to do is add the bottle, and then you take your stinger and you clamp it right to the bottom of your torch. And they even make a little adapter for like $4 or $5. You can put it right on there, and then you can TIG right here, right now with it.
Well, that's how a lot of the guys do it. Sometimes they got an SA200 on the back of their truck. It's a stick machine, always has and always will be. But you can scratch start TIG off that.
Yeah, and I would imagine it runs pretty clean too, because that's all that machine knows how to run is DC current.
Oh, I'm not getting brand singular or nothing, but one of the truly I guess best arc carrying machines ever built.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna quit making them now. I think they're switching the whole line over to Vantage now. That's what I heard last year. I was like, oh man, this is a shame. So now I got to start digging around trying to find one just to have one.
It'll be like the Chevy Camaro, the Ford Mustang. They're always going to be around. People's going to restore them and fix them up.
So now with the Sense program, Bobby, you're out there, you're teaching at the high school level. You interact with other high school instructors that teach welding, I'm assuming. Now, have you noticed since you all started doing the train the trainer programs that the other high school programs in that area that are teaching welding, that their students are coming out a little bit higher caliber than what they were before?
And a lot of different levels. Here in the last 2 years, Kentucky's got a bunch of money. They call it layback money. And so some programs have really been able to invest. Like some shops are looking better than mine at the high school out there, but getting some inverters and some high-end stuff. So we've seen a lot of ag teachers do a lot of different stuff across the board. But what I like about Sense is it's coming with a WPS. I've got a couple here with me. It comes with the WPS. It comes with the blueprint. And so it's challenging students to understand much more about the welding industry than just how to strike an arc and carry a puddle. They're reading the WPS, they're understanding their ranges that they're allowed to weld in. They're cutting their pieces, at least in my school, manually. And that blueprint reads plus or minus a 16th. So we're getting into into the weeds as far as being quality, and then welding those out. But yes, we have seen definitely an uptick in quality welders here at KWI because of the SENSE program that has been implemented at the high school level. So it's definitely helped as we pick those students up and carry them on to the CW program, which is what we run at Kentucky Welding Institute, that certified welder card.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's one thing I really liked about the Sense program when I was, teaching at the college level is that we would implement some of that stuff in there because it does have the blueprints and the WPSs and the welding symbols. So if you go to most of the schools, you don't get that part. It's maybe a couple hours a day, 100% hands on. You're not really getting that fundamentals, but the great thing about Sense is you're getting the fundamentals as well as the practical. And there's tests on both sides of that. So you've got a written test for your Sense level 1, but then there's also practical applications tests. They've got like small fabrication projects, the oxy-fuel cutting test that you have to go through to be able to cut that piece out. And you have to be able to do the layout as well. You get that piece of material, you got to read off a blueprint, and you have to lay that material out correctly and then cut it correctly. So you're getting graded twice.
To teach these guys that it's not about just laying the beads. A lot of guys can just weld. But if your super has to stand over top of you and tell you where to put the bead or what electrode to grab or what your amperage range is allowed to be, then you're really useless to them. They want guys that lean forward, that are self-starters, that can take that blueprint and that stack of metal and run with it. And they know where they're at in the plant and what they are and aren't allowed to put as far as, consumables and just we want our guys to be that next level.
And a lot of the instructors that we have in some of our training courses, it's wild that they don't normally say the most intimidating thing is, a vertical 60-10 or a vertical 70. The most intimidating thing is that blueprint. Yep. Because they're unfamiliar with weld symbols, but the Sense PowerPoints break it down so good. And the PowerPoints we've created, we take it from this is where you're at. You've got an arrow line and a reference line. We're going to put something on it. And we keep building and then going back and rewinding and refreshing. So by the end of, that PowerPoint that we created that builds on Sense, now they say, oh, this makes sense. Arrow side, other side. So when those students, whether they come to our welding school or another private welding school and increase their level, or whether they graduate high school and go right to work, they hit that job site ready to see the print and ready to build whatever that manufacturing company has.
No, that's great. And one of the things I've noticed is a lot of different curriculums, they align with Sense. So Sense, just for clarification for everybody, it's not a curriculum. Sense is a lot of things, but it's not a set curriculum. So you can be part of, NCCER, and that is a Sense aligned program. I believe Lincoln Electric, their LEAPS program, that is Sense aligned as well. Miller's Open Books, it's Sense aligned. So all these different curriculums, they're used as an aid or a supplement to help along with Sense and still be able to get Sense certifications along the way.
Yeah, here at KWI, we actually teach a lot of the NCCER modules because, in some cases, we can tie different industry together. So we may be teaching a module on welding safety, but that also ties into a module on boiler making safety or pipe fitting safety. We may be teaching a module on crane rigging, but that ties into a module for your core NCCR core module rigging. So there's things that you can lace together from Sense and NCCR and OSHA, different programs that's going to allow you to have a more versatile student coming out of the back door.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what this industry needs right now, and an educated welder is a dedicated welder. A lot of times I think we focus too much on the hands-on. Granted, welding it's a hands-on, it's a full contact sport. But you still have to have that fundamental knowledge, that background to be able to understand that, like we were talking about earlier, if you have a constant current machine, you can run stick or TIG on that. A lot of folks don't know that. So to be able to break that down, same thing with, constant voltage. Okay, those are both MIG welding processes, whether it be, flux core or gas metal arc welding. Okay, they come off the same power source. Or, just a lot of the different fundamentals. Same thing with oxy-fuel cutting. Having that fundamental knowledge is just going to make you that much better welder. Yes, you can take all these skills are transferable from one process to the next, but the knowledge base is where you lose it. You get somebody who's really good at stick welding, you can teach them MIG pretty quick. The biggest disconnect is going through the different settings, as far as like wire diameter, wire feed speed, drive rolls, gas composition, what gas for which process. So I think that's where a lot of programs fall short, is that fundamental education, like where the written exams kind of pick up some of that, where the tactile or the hands-on or the kinesthetic learning kind of drops off.
Yeah, when KWI was first, being, I guess, even thought of, Bobby came out to my place. I ran a business for 20 some years. And he said, if you were hiring someone, he said, they know how to weld. What else do you need them to know how to do? And one of the first things I said, they know how to change a MIG liner.
Yeah.
Because when something happens to the piece of equipment, they need to be able to troubleshoot that. Whether it's a bird nest, or maybe it's something as simple as you didn't turn the gas on, or that gun has came just a fudge out of where it connects in, and now you're leaking all your gas. You can't figure out why you got porosity. Those little tiny things that the students learn in their training programs go a long way at the job site.
Why we started KDBI, when I was kicking students out, talking to industry locally here, they were saying, man, we get guys that can lay a bead. They're coming from other places, community college or private, whatever. But on the small things, they get tripped up. They look so green when we ask them to change a MIG liner or troubleshoot this porosity. So we're trying to get our guys to be those thinkers. We think that Sense helps with that so much, because it is separating those who truly love the craft and they want to know as much about it, and they're not just in it for the money, just being a bead hand, if you will. And I think, we all love to weld, but do you want to be on your tools your entire career? That's the question we want to ask too. Do you want to, Jesse Pfizer was a student of mine out of the Sense program. Now he's a project manager at 25 years old. Sam Johnson was a student of mine through the Sense program. Now he's a CWI for a SWAT. He made $225,000 last year at 23 years old. That's a big difference between, yes, he spent his 5 years on his tools, but he was also thinking down the road and putting more of this together, bigger picture type, and able to elevate that, that money making skill, I guess. So I think a lot more companies now are looking for the person who can solve the problems, who can think forward, they want those soft skills. I think we talk about it a lot, but I think so many weld schools are just kicking out the hard skills. They're booth welders. They can pass the test. Look at me. I can 6G TIG root, 718 film cap, get me on the job. And then that superintendent, that foreman, has to lead them around by the hand. And that is killing us. So many haters on social media throw darts at us because they think that's what we're producing. And it's actually what we're fighting against.
Yeah, the troubleshooting aspect of it is huge. And trying to crank out like a well-rounded welder. One of the things that I used to do, you're probably not going to find it in a manual, and I don't know if you guys do this up there or not, but I would used to sabotage my students' machine. So like class starts at 7:30, I'd get there like 6:15, and I'd go through and I'd switch polarities. I'd hook up the wrong gas. I'd loosen up a drive roll, back out of contact tip, and not because I was being mean or I wanted to play a joke on them. It's because I would tell my students, every day when you come in, you need to check your machine. Every same thing with safety equipment. Before I put on my harness, I'm going to make sure I don't have any burn holes in there. I'm going to make sure all the threads are in there. You want to go over your equipment every single time. And the first weld of the day should not be the root on a test piece or a plate, or a part that's getting ready to roll out of the door. So go through and check your machine. And that's how I would teach them troubleshooting, because I didn't want to just wait for something to go wrong. I wanted to make sure things that went wrong, so that once they left, they might be the only welder in that shop, or they might be one of 3 welders in that shop, but nobody really knows anything about it. So when they roll through the door and, the wire's not feeding like it should, oh, well, hey, I got to swap out the liner. They knew how to do that, and, the wire's slipping. Okay, it's either my drive roll tension or I've got the wrong drive rolls on there, or, oh, that's, when I strike an arc and I start welding, this sounds a little funny. Oh, my polarity might be on backwards. So just to be able to trip them up enough to, and it's done in a controlled environment. And like I said, it's not done to poke fun at anybody or set anybody up for failure. It's actually setting them up for success. But they've got to have that fundamental knowledge and know where to start looking for things.
That's right. I taught an OSHA 30 class to a local business here in town. And near the end of the class, we went to a portion of the business where there was nobody at, and it was safe. And before the students got there that final morning, I booby trapped the shop. So I would lay an extinguisher down on the floor, instead of it being hanging on the wall, and I would, purposely do some things, maybe lay an extension cord out, some stuff like that. And then one of their final tests was, hey, this is your house. You look at it every day. See if you can find the things that are wrong. And it's the same way on welding. One of my favorite modules to teach for Sense is the weld inspection, because now you can get into using tools that you're going to see the QCs use to bust you out on the job, and why that tool is important. You're going to see the flaws in the weld. What can you do to make it better? And normally during that class, the students hate me because I tend to get long-winded when I'm teaching that one because I love it.
No, that's a good section to get long-winded too. But I would tell my students the same thing. Like I would show them how to inspect welds, especially after I got my CWI, because I could bust out the code book and show them exactly where it was. As welders, we're expected to weld to and perform to all these different codes. D11, ASME, API. But how many welders have actually ever picked up one of those books and read through it or know what's actually in there? So that's some of the stuff that I would do is go through and say, okay, here's a fillet weld gauge, here's a VWAC gauge, this is a bridge cam, this is a high-low, and I would show them these tools, and not to kind of give them the tools to fight back against the inspector when the inspector says, hey, your weld's messed up, you got to cut it out and redo it. But at least you can start doing some level of quality control before you call that inspector over. If you have undercut, you can go ahead and make a repair before you call them over there. That way you're not wasting anybody's time. But don't argue with the inspector when he tells you it's still messed up. But go back there and fix it, because he's, at the end of the day, that inspector's the one that's got to buy off on it.
Yeah, and it's never the code. It's never the inspector's fault. But you're always going to blame the inspector. You're welding against the code, and if you're welding, I've seen pretty welds fail and I've seen ugly welds pass. Yep. But if it meets the code requirement, then in some cases you get on some specialty jobs, they want the right color stainless. I know some guys that have busted out on tack before because it was the wrong color. But in most cases, you're going against a certain code, and you got to be to that level no matter where you're at.
Well, for sure. For instance, most of this stuff is VT. So you're teaching your students how to VT their own stuff. But I always set it up that they will do practice coupons, and then there'll be that summative, that final exam for MIG, that short circuit coupon and that spray coupon. But they know that I have to be present, that I'm going to get my paint marker out, and I'm going to initial this. We're going to start a time clock, even though there's no time on this, and they're going to show me their best. Now, on the stick, there is an actual destructive test. We're going to bend these, so I treat that to the top, like they were on the road. If they come to me, I'm gonna go ahead and give them hold points at the root, the hot, the fill, and then they need to call for their cap. And when they come and get me after that hour welding, and we'll typically do the 3 and the 4. Sense requires the 2 and the 3. But when they come get me and there's an arc strike outside the weld zone, or there is a small piece of porosity, or I bust them immediately, and they get upset, and be like, oh, well, give me 5 more minutes. Trying to teach them that it's a poker game now. Like, we're at war. I'm trying to defend my company against hiring bad welders. You're trying to get on this job today. There is no more teaching at this point. We've got to make this real world. So when you call me in to look at this out, it had better be the best of the best. There should be no trap slack. You should be showing me what you've got 100%. And I think that's an important part of Sense, is to teach these students what it is to get a job, because it's not typically, unless you're a fab, sitting down and white collar interviewing, it is going to be throwing down on a weld test. And for us anyway at KWI, it might be traveling to Sweeney, Texas, a 17-hour drive, and turning back home because you didn't pass the weld test. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and that happens quite regularly in industry. Yeah, you don't get a chance to practice because you're driving from. I was just talking to a guy, Ronnie Bowen, last week on the podcast. You don't get that chance to practice. You're literally leaving one job site in hopes of securing another one. So you get there, you find out that morning what that weld test consists of. They don't be like, hey, go over there and practice for a couple hours, and when you're ready, call us over. We'll give you a set of coupons. We'll go ahead and knock this test out. But that's not how it goes. It's like, hey, there's a stinger, there's the lead. Get up on it and get it done. Turn in your piece.
Yeah, or the folks in HR told you one thing, and by the time you get there, the QC, he changed. No, we want this now. So you're doing something totally different. They added flux to your TIG rod or something crazy.
And the student, that grad's always like, well, that's not what the HR said. The QC said, well, you said you were a combo pipe welder, so let's go.
Yeah, let's get up on it. Now, another interesting thing with the Sense program is you can actually get your stick cert through that program as well. But folks have to understand, and I mean, it's written in the Sense program that's got to be tested by a third party, because the welding instructors can't test them for the certified welder program. It's the same thing when I was a CWI running the ATF at the school that I was teaching at, as well as teaching it, in the classroom, I was not allowed to test
Conflict
any
of
of those
interest.
students. So you can't. Yeah, it's conflict of interest. It's a ethics deal. I can't test anybody that I've trained. So like, do you guys like travel around, or can folks from that are working on the Sense program, can they go to KWI and test there and get that CW attached to their Sense certification?
Yeah, normally when a student graduates high school and they come into our program, um, we start out with flux core here. I think whether you're an experienced welder with a few years of high school, or whether you graduated community college, or whether you're just coming out of the military and transitioning into a new career, for me and the instructors we have, teaching the eye on the puddle for the flux core is a little bit easier. Uh, but almost immediately within the first couple of weeks, that student has that CW card with flux core, and then we jump right into stick. So yeah, we haven't had too many students come from high school to get that cert, but it has been done
And
in
Ashley does
times
travel a little
past.
bit and
Okay.
help certify high school students for the stick test. I think stick mostly, Ashley. Is that right? So Southern
Yeah, we
Ohio
got some
and
STIG
Kentucky.
and yeah. um,
No, that's great. And I mean, like, I know you're also involved in the Skills USA program as well. You was down there last week in what, Alabama, right?
Yeah, go kind of ride that train car all the way to the top of the hill. So we sponsor probably a third or a fourth of the regional events here in Kentucky. KWI does with medal and judges and prizes. It's a state level. I run two events, and KWI sponsors those for welding. I co-chair the national welding competition with a good buddy of mine, Ed Norman, who used to be the co-chair, or the chairpersons rather, for the AWS Education Committee. And then on the world skills level, I'm the co-chair for scoring and the chief marketing manager. So it's a really awesome program when you see young welders who start at the regional level and they work hard. So just last week we crowned our U.S. representative. So we started with 40 welders, and they were shipping projects and material all over the United States. And we finally narrowed that down. We got down to 9 individuals. We trained these individuals at a location in Alabama that's donated to the AWS World Skills Selection Committee at Alabama Robotics Technology Institute, and we train them to weld like robots. Then we send them back home to practice. We keep narrowing the field down. So the final three we brought in just last week, but we wanted to feel these three individuals were competing to be our U.S. representative. They're not just competing against each other; they're competing against a scoring system, a code. But whoever scores the most points is that one person. But to make it feel more real, the American Welding Society invited international competitors. So we had competitors from Canada, from Ireland, and from Australia competing side by
Oh,
side
wow.
with American competitors. And at the end of the week, we crowned our U.S. champion that will compete in France in a few months. And the other competitors got a score to go back home and see what they need to work on. So it was a really awesome event.
Very cool. That's an intense program too. Like, I got to talk to Chandler Vincent and a couple other past competitors of Skills USA, and that's intense. And then to go up there, I went to see the World Skills competition when they hosted it in Lincoln 2 years ago. And man, like, the criteria for that, like, you're not welding against a code in that. I mean, it supersedes any code for welding that's ever been written. I mean, the criteria is just so stringent and tight.
Yeah, the criteria we use at World Skills is so tight that we could probably take two car frames from Ford Motor Company that were welded by two different robots and decide which robot was the better welder.
Yeah, and disqualify them too.
Yeah, that's right. And these things aren't decided by dozens of points. A lot of times, a world level competition, from fifth place to first place could be, less than a point, even 8/10 of a point or less.
Yeah. It's crazy. I thought it was pretty cool that, like, all the different judges from, like, your US judge can't judge the US piece. So I think that's kind of cool, that kind of how they have that grading criteria and the scoring requirements set up for that, to where it's completely unbiased when they go through and they check everything.
Yeah, and one thing a lot of people, sort of don't realize, in Skills USA competitions, most of the time it's someone from industry or Lincoln Electric or Miller or whatever judging. But once you get to that world level, the expert from that country, they're there doing the judging, and they're making sure that their student or their competitor is getting all the marks that they receive or that they earn.
Yeah. No, it's a really cool process. I wanted to go up there to Alabama this year. I wasn't able to swing it. I was actually setting up my own ATF this past couple of weeks. So now that we got the school up and going, I was like, we became an AWS educational partner right after we
Nice.
opened the doors. It was shortly after we opened the doors. And then I went through and I was like, okay, next check in the box is I'm setting up for an ATF. So I've been preparing for that for probably the last, I don't know, 6-7 months, getting everything ready and make sure everything's calibrated. And I got my equipment in and, doing all the services and all the stuff that are required on that, getting the QA manual together and combing through that several times
Right.
and just preparing for that audit.
Yeah, I think an ATF is challenging. It's expensive, but the reward you get because you're putting that credential on your students is unparalleled. But it makes sure that there's tight, stringent standards, as you know now. But it keeps that bar so high for those people that run the ATF that it makes a difference, and industry recognizes, hey, you got this credential from American Welding Society. It's a big
Oh
deal.
yeah, I was explaining to a client the other day. He's like, what do you mean? Like you have to have traceability? I was like, well, I have to know exactly where these welding rods are coming from. I need to get a certificate of conformance on them. The material that's coming through the door, the base metal that we're going to use, I have to have heat and lot numbers on those. I have to have mil spec reports. And he's like, why do you need all that for a weld test? I said, well, how else are you going to verify that they're welding on the appropriate base metal and the appropriate filler metal for that test? Are you going to be able to look at a piece of steel and tell me that's from, group one, group two, group three of AWSD 11? You can't tell by looking at it. So you got to have traceability on all this stuff. Same thing with the welding rods. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that are making welding rods. They may say 7018 on the box, but if it doesn't conform to A5.1, that's not going to work. So like you got to make sure all this stuff is accounted for so that when somebody whips out that wallet card, they're like, okay, like you've got a set of skills behind you because everything was validated
And
step
so
by
many people
step of the
dismiss that
process.
so quick. An ATF or your certs don't matter, but to know what goes behind that is that's heresy to say. Because 8 months it took you to all that homework, all that data, all that dress right dress, and checking those boxes. It is important. And to put those certifications on those students as they roll out means a lot. If I was in the HR seat hiring somebody, you know how the industry is. It's so tough. We're going to have to call in 100 welders because half of them won't pass the PIS test, and then another half won't pass the weld test. But if I was in HR hiring somebody who had a certified welder card from the American Welding Society, it means that they passed in front of a CWI at an accredited testing facility, then they're probably going to pass that weld test. Especially if it's the same. They've been vetted by a very high standard with the American Welding Society, and I think that's so important. And I get pretty passionate and upset when people dismiss it so quickly that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Yes,
checks and
yes.
balances that go behind going through an ATF versus, calling up Bobby's weld inspection services and he rolls in and he's like, here, stick these together. And, there's people are baffled when I'm like, you have to weld to the WPS. They're like, well, that's not the amps or the settings that I use. And it's so, well, it's going to be the
Today,
amps and settings that you
right?
use for this test. Or we're going to go ahead
Yeah.
and cut it off right here before you fill out the application.
Yeah, and you said something earlier too that we do it with a lot of other organizations. So for CCO, I can't be the trainer and then the examiner, but we were used to that already with American Welding Society. So if it's my student, then I'm not the CWI that's going to be Bobby, or if it's Blake's student and he was their instructor, then that CWI is going to be Andrew or a different instructor from a different shift. So we keep at least one CWI on every shift, and in most cases, 2 or 3 CWIs here on every shift. That way, there's never a conflict of interest. I'm testing your guys, and you're testing my guys.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. You got to keep it clear cut and across the board.
And
That's right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and as a school, it's so easy then too to have companies want you to test their welders. So Ashley tested dozens
Yes.
for Yates. We just got on with UPS especially as far as being a testing facility for them because yeah, they still want to come out and they want to see us give a test. But because we're an AWS accredited testing facility with 2 and 3 CWIs on each shift, it's much easier for them to be like, you know what, thumbs up. If we've got a grad coming to us, in Sweeney, Texas, and they pass the test here, we're going to walk them on the job down there, and that's awesome. That we're testing for those companies, and how cool is that for the students here to know that so many contractors and companies use us? We've got an extra 6 booths in the back, and that's all we do is test, contractors, welders. But then
Yeah, that's kind of what I set up for 3 weeks out of the month for the most part, because we do the 1 week comprehensive class. Like we teach mostly home hobbyists, DIYers, and makers, but sometimes I get people that have been in the industry for a while. They want to come in and brush up or learn a new skill set. So that's kind of booked for 1 week. But the other 3 weeks out of the month, that's all I'm doing nowadays. It seems like is testing welders coming through the door, and they're coming from all over the place because more and more companies want to see that wallet card. They want to see something behind that other than, you got, okay, yeah, your welding instructor signed off on your weld cert, and it's their job to get you a job once you get out of school. So yeah, there's no favoritism there, right? So like I'm getting a lot more people that are coming in that, they're looking for that card.
Are you seeing that now? So Ashley is actually making his rounds around Kentucky because a lot of companies are calling me in to write a WPS because jobs and bids that they're doing now require certified welders. Are you seeing that across? Yeah.
Oh, I'm seeing that quite a bit down here, just because insurance liability and all that stuff. So like a lot of engineers, they're the ones that really need the welding symbols class through Sense, because the welders are starting to learn how to read them, and the engineers aren't putting the appropriate symbols. But yeah, we are seeing that because for years, like every set of blueprints I got, you have that boilerplate paragraph in there: all welds shall conform to AWS D1.1 and be performed by a certified welder. Now it's coming up to where all welds shall be performed by an AWS certified welder. So when they see that, they're like, okay, let's cut all the guesswork out, run them through an ATF, or send them to an ATF to go get tested there. Those are the people that we want to see on the job site. So I'm seeing that more and more over the past couple of years, because like I built the ATF for the school that I previously worked at prior to starting my own. So I've been seeing this for, I think we started ours in 2017, 2018. So I'm seeing that a lot more, especially down here. You got companies on the Space Coast. We got all the theme parks. So, it's becoming more and more demand.
Another 10 or 20 years, and you won't hear people say that search don't matter, because it matters anymore. It really does.
I ran into exactly your situation about a year and a half ago, Jason. A out-of-state company called me up, and they said, hey, we just got a new bid and they require AWS certified welders. So then, no problem. We can help you out. Send me your procedure. That was the first line. Well, that was real interesting because their welding procedure was welders must wear safety glasses. Welders must use proper PPE. And I called him. I said, no, I need the WPS.
That's more than some have.
He said, yeah, that's what we sent you. So then the second line was, well, let's fall back and punt, because we got to figure this out together. So I met with the company. I looked at what they were required to weld, looked at the equipment, and then we just started from the ground up, and then built a procedure that fit perfectly for this company. And I think since then we've certified well over 24 welders to help that company keep growing with new employees.
Nice. That's what I said that, at least they had that, because I asked the same questions. What do you need them certified to? And they're like, welding. Okay, this isn't going anywhere. What procedure do you have? We don't. Okay, well, let's start with that. Let's build you a program. So I try to go a little bit above and beyond and say, let's build you a program. Let's get some WPSs, so you have those. Your welders can work off of those, not just test to them, and try to help them out, because a lot of times the companies, they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they're supposed to be asking. So I've dealt with enough of them to where I can take them by the hand, like that young welder fresh out of school that all they know how to do is 6GR, but they can't swap out a liner, and just say, okay, little fella, walk with me here. Let's go ahead and get the code book out, and just kind of get them lined up, and they appreciate that, and you become their go-to for all their testing moving forward.
Yeah, and if you can tie those to some of the AWS standard WPSs that have already been tested and proven, that makes life so much easier. It's $250, and now you own a procedure that belongs to your company and it's been proven 1,000 times. you can start moving forward really fast. And with Sense, they have those SWPSs that are tied into all the procedures for those welds. So even in early age, the welders are starting to learn what's going on, even though the company may not know. Then you test the welder. I tested a gentleman not long ago. He goes, "Oh yeah, we do the same stuff for my high school. AWS is similar," and it really was. So it's the entry level welder produced by Sense coming into the industry is a lot of times more knowledgeable than a guy who's been there 10 or 8 years just pulling the trigger or putting sticks in the electrode.
Yeah. In the Sense program, it's very affordable to get into it. Like, as far as you can become Sense level 1 and Sense level 2, or you can just become Sense level 1. But I mean, it's a one-time buy-in fee. I think it's a couple $100 or less than that. And in addition to that, it also helps open some doors, like the the AWS workforce grant. That's one of the questions that's asked on that workforce grant. You can get up to $25,000. You get a little bit more. They probably go off a scoring system, but you get some more points added to that if you're already affiliated through Sense. Plus, you get some of your instructors are listed on there as members as well.
Well, and top that off, all of your students now can become free AWS members, because AWS last year had that huge push. So now it's free student membership, which is so awesome. Thank the foundation and those that push for that.
Yeah, no, that's been a great help too, especially if you guys are using the portal for your ATF, and you go to type in their email address, and all of a sudden their profile automatically pops up. Well, you just saved me 20 minutes of trying to decipher your chicken scratch and transfer that into name and address and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's definitely another benefit that AWS recently rolled out, was free student membership. So if you are a student listening to this, or you're a welding instructor listening to this, take that information back to the classroom and have your students, register for AWS memberships for free. And they get the digital copy of the welding journal. You also get discounts on all the codes and standards and everything. So it makes sense, literally, not
I think,
just playing off that word.
You still get a starter library kit. You pick 10 books too when you first start.
Yeah, I think it's 8. Yeah, I think you get 8 books when you first start up. You get 8 different technical manuals when you start up and everything.
When you become, I think they just closed. I think maybe a week or so ago, but the American Welding Society does awesome with the scholarships. So being a student member, being a part of a Sense program, and being a high school student or outside of that, and applying to those AWS scholarships helps out a bunch too.
Well, another thing too, Bobby, whenever you get ready to take your CWI exam in 5-6 years, you get a massive discount. I was at FabTech. I had to buy a metric inspection kit for some of the stuff I do for World Skills. And here's my AWS membership number, and boom, it wipes so much % off of this inspection kit. So whether it's books, tools, or CWI training, just being an AWS member has its benefit.
Oh, it sure does. That's what I told people. If you're going for your CWI, like, here's a little secret. Here's a tip for you. Go ahead and become a member first. That way you can rack up the discounts when you buy your code book, you register for class, you register to sit for the exam. Because at the end of the day, once you pay all those fees and everything, you're going to get an AWS membership anyway as a CWI. So go ahead and get them discounts up front by getting that membership.
Yeah, and FabTech's going to be in Orlando in October.
Yes, sir.
So right in your neck of the woods. Can't wait to see you down there. But if you're going to need an updated version of the D11 or you want to buy another inspection kit for one of your instructors, then that's the place to go, because they have FabTech discounts, and top that off with your AWS membership.
Yeah, because they got the bookstore right there at FabTech. As soon as you walk onto the show floor, they've had at least in Chicago. Yeah, as soon as you walk into the show floor, they were right there on the right hand side. I'm not sure where it's going to be this year, as far as like where their booth's going to be set up, but I'm looking forward to that. I don't have to fly too far to get to Orlando.
I got to drive along with you.
Yeah, I'll jump in the car. I'll be there in about 40 minutes.
All right.
Well, Ashley, Bobby, it's been an absolute pleasure catching back up with y'all and seeing about all the cool things you're doing, not just at KWI, but for your local schools, as well as statewide, as well as the train the trainer programs you're doing for other folks that are coming in from out of state. I really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for coming out on the podcast.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you. Can't wait till you're back in Kentucky when you check in.
Yes, sir.
Jason, have a good night, sir.
You as well. All right, ladies and gents, thank you so much for tuning in to this month's episode of Weld Wednesdays with AWS. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation and learned more about the AWS Sense program. For more information on the Sense program, you can head on over to aws.org or just click the link in the show notes. I hope you all have an awesome month. Stay safe out there, And until next time, make every weld better than your last.